In 2025, over 14.5 million people in the UK, that's more than 1 in 5, are living in poverty. Even more shocking, over 4 million of them, and here's the part no one's talking about. A growing number of these people are working full-time jobs. How is it possible that in one of the richest nations in the world, people with jobs are still lining up at food banks? Why are more and more families living in temporary shelters, even while paying rent every single month? Something doesn't add up. And the truth is, the headlines aren't telling the full story. It's easy to blame inflation or the economy, but what if I told you that behind the curtain, a series of quiet policy changes, forgotten communities, and hidden costs are creating a poverty crisis that's worse than we... Today we're breaking down 10 reasons why poverty is exploding in the UK right now. Reasons you're not hearing on the news, and that might even be affecting people you know. So if you think poverty only happens to other people, or that the safety net will catch everyone who falls, think again. What's happening now could shape the country for decades. And trust me, some of these will shock you. The gig economy trap. At first glance, the gig economy seems like a modern solution to traditional employment problems. Flexible hours, independence, and the ability to work on your own terms. But beneath the surface, it's become a poverty trap for millions in the UK. Gig workers, from delivery drivers to freelance creatives, are often classified as self-employed. That means they don't get sick pay or even a guaranteed minimum wage. Many are forced to work long hours just to make ends meet, and when demand drops, so does their income, instantly. No safety net, no fallback. And here's the catch. These jobs are growing. More than 4.4 million people in the UK now rely on gig work as their main income. That's nearly 1 in 7 workers. It's not just students or side hustlers anymore. It's parents, caretakers, and even retirees trying to cover their bills. One recent study found that nearly half of gig workers live below the poverty line. That's not flexibility, that's exploitation. There's also the hidden psychological toll. With income depending on algorithms and app ratings, many gig workers and anxiety. It's like being stuck in a race with no finish line and no rules. It doesn't end there. Gig workers often lack access to basic financial services like mortgages or credit, simply because their income is too irregular or considered unstable by banks. This leads to even deeper exclusion, reinforcing the cycle of poverty. And yet, this system is expanding. Why? Because it's cheap for companies. No benefits, no long-term obligations, just labor on demand. It boosts profits while shifting all the risk onto the worker. So while the gig economy might sound like freedom for millions of people, it's anything but. It's a fragile existence masked as opportunity, and it's silently expanding poverty under the radar. If we want to fix the poverty crisis, we have to. Number 2. Universal credit reforms backfire. Universal credit was introduced with the goal of simplifying the benefits system. A single monthly payment to support those out of work or on a low income. On paper, it sounded like progress. But in reality, many of the reforms made over the last few years have done the exact opposite. They've pushed more people deeper into poverty. One of the biggest issues? The 5-week wait. New claimants must wait over a month payment, forcing many into debt, rent arrears, or relying on food banks just to survive. For someone already in a vulnerable position, 5 weeks is a lifetime. And then there's the sanction system. Miss one job centre appointment or submit a form late, and your payments could be stopped for weeks, even months. These penalties don't just affect lazy claimants, they often hit the sick, the disabled, and working parents trying to juggle multiple responsibilities. Meanwhile, real-term benefit amounts have fallen due to on housing and child support have left families unable to meet basic needs. For many, universal credit has become a system that punishes instead of supports. It's no surprise that demand for emergency food parcels from groups like the Trussell Trust has skyrocketed in recent years. People aren't choosing to live off benefits, they're being failed by a system that's supposed to help them. Universal credit should be a safety net, not a trapdoor. Yet for too many in 2025, it's become the very thing that's dragging them down. What do you think? Is universal credit helping or harming people? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you find this video insightful, hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into real issues affecting everyday. Number 3. The hidden cost of childcare. Imagine waking up at 6 a.m., getting your toddler dressed, making breakfast, and rushing to drop them off at nursery before heading to a full-time job that barely covers the bills. Now imagine that half your monthly income goes straight to childcare. That's the reality for countless parents in the UK today. Childcare has become one of the most punishing costs for working families. In some areas, it's more expensive than rent. A full-time nursery costs an average of £14,000 a year. And that's before factoring in transport, uniforms, or emergency care. And here's the part no one talks about. It's forcing parents, especially mothers, to drop out of the workforce entirely. They're not lazy, they're not unwilling. They've done the maths and realized that working just doesn't make financial sense anymore. For single parents, the situation is even worse. Without extended family or flexible jobs, many are stuck in a loop, unable to afford childcare and therefore unable to work, which keeps them dependent on a system that barely sustains them. Government support. It exists, but it's patchy, hard to access, and rarely enough. Free hours don't and means-tested aid often excludes those just above the eligibility line, the so-called working poor who fall through the cracks. And the ripple effects don't stop at the family level. This is a workforce issue, a gender equality issue, an economic development issue. Every parent sidelined by childcare costs represents lost productivity, unrealized potential, and in many cases a child growing up in deeper financial hardship. Childcare should be a ladder that helps people climb, not a weight dragging them down. But in the UK right now, it's one of the biggest and quietest drivers of modern poverty. Number 4. Housing crisis intensifies. It used to be that if you worked hard and saved, you could eventually. That dream is slipping further out of reach for millions across the UK. In 2025, the housing crisis isn't just about affordability, it's about survival. Rents have skyrocketed, especially in urban areas. In London, the average rent for a one-bedroom flat now exceeds £2,000 a month. Even in smaller cities, families are shelling out over half their income just to keep a roof over their heads. And for those on benefits, the housing support simply doesn't match reality. More families than ever are living in temporary accommodation, hotels, B&Bs, even shipping containers. According to Shelter, over 140,000 children in England are now officially homeless. Not couch surfing, not living with relatives, homeless. And it's not just the unemployed. Nurses, teachers, and other essential workers are being priced out of the very communities they serve. They're commuting for hours, living in overcrowded flats, and moving away. The government has promised new housing projects, but many are delayed, underfunded, or aimed at affordable price points that are still far out of reach for the average renter or buyer. At the same time, buy-to-let landlords and corporate investors are snapping up properties, converting family homes into multiple rentals, and driving up prices. The system rewards hoarding property, not providing homes. Even social housing is in crisis. Waiting lists stretch for years, with some applicants spending a decade or more in limbo. Repairs are delayed, conditions are poor, and residents are left powerless to demand change. Housing is not just a market commodity, it's a basic human need. And right now, it's being treated like a luxury item, available only to those who can pay the most. The housing crisis is no longer a warning. It's here. And it's pushing more people into poverty with every rent increase, eviction notice, and broken promise. Number 5. Mental health services cut. There's a silent emergency happening across the UK, playing out in doctors' offices, emergency rooms, and behind closed doors. Mental health services, already stretched before the pandemic, are now buckling under pressure. And the people paying the price, those already at the edge. Access to mental health support has never been more limited. Waiting lists for therapy can stretch 6 months, a year, sometimes even longer. If you're in crisis, you might be told to call a helpline or sit tight until a space opens up. Struggling with depression, anxiety, or trauma, that's not just frustrating, it can be life-threatening. It's worse for low-income communities. These areas often have fewer mental health facilities, fewer professionals, and more stigma. And because therapy is rarely free outside the NHS, private options are off the table for most. So people suffer in silence, their conditions getting worse until they can't work, can't study, can't cope. This leads directly to poverty. Mental health challenges often reduce a person's ability to maintain relationships or seek out assistance. They fall through the cracks, and the system doesn't catch them, because it's too overwhelmed to even notice. Cuts to local authority budgets have meant closures of community mental health centres, youth outreach programs, and addiction services. What's left is a hollowed-out system where only the most urgent cases get attention, and even then, it's rarely enough. We talk a lot about the economic cost of mental illness, lost productivity, increased NHS spending. But what about the human cost? The parent too anxious to attend job interviews, the teen dropping out of school, the worker dismissed for burnout. These are real lives, unraveling quietly, and poverty only makes it worse. It's a vicious loop, leads to poverty, and poverty worsens mental health. Until we fix both, we fix neither. Number 6. Rural poverty ignored. When most people think of poverty, they picture inner-city neighborhoods, crowded flats, food banks on street corners, visible signs of struggle. But there's another side to poverty that gets almost no attention: rural poverty. And in 2025, it's quietly worsening. In rural areas, the issues aren't as obvious, but they're just as damaging. Public transport is scarce or non-existent, making it difficult to get to jobs, schools, or even the nearest grocery store. So working from home or accessing online services isn't a given, it's a luxury. Jobs are limited, especially ones that pay well. Many rural economies rely on seasonal or part-time work in farming, tourism, or retail. Benefits like universal credit don't account for the unique costs of rural life, like having to own and maintain a car just to survive. Healthcare, that's another challenge. With fewer GP practices and long distances to hospitals, even basic medical care becomes a logistical nightmare. Mental health services are even rarer and unsupported. And then there's housing. While rural homes may look quaint, many are poorly insulated, energy inefficient, and expensive to heat, especially during long winters. Fuel poverty is common, and government support doesn't stretch far enough to help. Even education becomes a problem. Some children must travel miles each day just to attend school. When families can't afford transport or school supplies, the educational gap grows, locking in cycles of hardship from a young age. The media rarely covers these stories, politicians, and the data? It's harder to track because poverty in rural areas is scattered, not concentrated. It hides behind hedgerows, down winding lanes, in silence. Rural poverty is invisible not because it's rare, but because it's ignored. And the longer we pretend it's not there, the deeper the damage goes, not just to those living in it, but to the fabric of the nation that's supposed to support them. Number 7. Cost of food and fuel skyrocketing. For millions of families across the UK, the weekly shop is no longer routine, it's a crisis. Each trip to the supermarket feels like a gamble, watching prices inch higher while paychecks stay frozen. Essentials like milk, bread and eggs have doubled in cost compared to just a few years ago. And it's not just food. Prices are soaring too, hitting everyone from drivers to those heating their homes. Energy bills have ballooned to record highs, with some households now paying over £3,000 a year just to keep the lights on and the heating running. Prepayment meters, often forced onto low-income families, mean that when the money runs out, so does the power. No lights, no heat, no hot meals. These aren't luxuries, these are necessities. And for many, they're slipping out of reach. The cause? A perfect storm of global supply chain disruptions, inflation, war, and profit-driven pricing. Meanwhile, wages and benefits lag far behind. A loaf of bread might only rise by 50 pence, but across hundreds of items and dozens of pay periods, the squeeze is relentless. For low-income households, every pound spent on rising bills is a pound not spent on school supplies, clothes, or even rent. Families are being forced into impossible choices: food or fuel, heating or hygiene. Food banks are now reporting record demand, not just from the unemployed, but from nurses, delivery drivers, and public workers, people with jobs who still can't afford to eat. This is what modern poverty looks like, not destitution in the old-fashioned sense, but a slow erosion of stability, driven by prices that rise faster than hope. And the worst part, many of these hikes are permanent. What was once temporary cost of living pressure is quickly becoming the new normal. Number 8. Immigration policy fallout. When immigration is discussed in politics or the media, it's often framed as a burden or a problem. But in reality, immigrants have long been the backbone of essential sectors, from healthcare and agriculture to construction and hospitality. In 2025, changes to immigration show their real cost, not just to migrants, but to the entire economy, and especially the poor. Tighter visa restrictions and post-Brexit enforcement have created severe labour shortages. Farms are short of pickers, care homes are short of carers, and small businesses can't find the staff they need to stay open. That shortage of workers drives up costs, delays services, and pushes prices higher, especially in food and care, two sectors low-income families rely on most. Many of these jobs were traditionally filled by immigrant labour, work that is physically demanding, often low-paid, but vital. With fewer people willing or able to take those jobs, the pressure lands on British workers who are now being asked to do more for less, or not at all, and for migrant workers who are still here. The environment is increasing. Legal pathways are narrow, the threat of deportation looms, and support systems are minimal. Exploitation is rampant, with many afraid to speak out or report abuse for fear of losing everything. It's a myth that immigration harms the economy. In fact, it's often the opposite. When we restrict movement, we don't just lose workers, we weaken the very systems that make daily life function. The poorest suffer first. When services collapse, when food becomes more expensive, when carers disappear, it's not the rich who feel it. It's the families just scraping by. Immigration policy isn't just a border issue, it's a poverty issue. And right now, the fallout is spreading. Number 9. Digital divide deepens. In a world where almost everything has moved online, from job applications to GP appointments, digital access is no longer a luxury. It's a necessity. Across the UK, that access just isn't there. And it's turning a gap into a canyon. Let's start with the basics. Around 1 in 5 adults in the UK still struggle with basic digital skills. That means they can't fill out online forms, use email confidently, or access digital banking. And in low-income households, internet connections are often unreliable or completely absent. The cost of staying connected is rising too. Laptops, tablets, smartphones, data plans, these aren't cheap. And when you're cheating, the internet often loses. Children fall behind in school because they can't access homework portals. Job seekers miss out on opportunities because they can't upload a CV or attend a Zoom interview. Then there's the digital bureaucracy. Benefits, job center appointments, council housing lists, all online. If you can't navigate the system, you can't access the help you need. And good luck finding face-to-face alternatives. They're being phased out. Rural areas face an even tougher time. Patchy broadband, no mobile signal, and limited public libraries mean digital isolation is big. Add in disability or age, and the barriers multiply. And let's not forget trust. Many older adults or vulnerable individuals avoid online services entirely due to fear of scams, confusion over technology, or a deep mistrust in digital security. This divide doesn't just isolate people, it locks them out of opportunities. Education, healthcare, financial support. Everything now depends on a screen. Closing the digital divide isn't about gadgets or apps, it's about equality. Because in 2025, if you're not online, you're left. And for the most vulnerable, that gap can mean the difference between surviving and slipping through the cracks. Number 10. Media narrative manipulation. When we talk about poverty, the conversation is rarely neutral. The language used in newspapers, talk shows, and social media carries weight. And more often than not, it blames the poor rather than the system that keeps them poor. In 2025, continue to paint poverty as a personal failure. Lazy, irresponsible, addicted to benefits. These stereotypes are not only outdated, they're dangerous. They shift attention away from the structural causes of poverty. Low wages, unaffordable housing, underfunded services, and exploitative policies. And it's not just tabloids. Even mainstream coverage often focuses on individual stories of overcoming adversity, as if poverty can be solved with grit alone. What's missing is a serious examination of the systems that create the adversity in the first place. Worse, these narratives influence when the public believes that most people on benefits are faking it, or that poverty is a lifestyle choice. There's less support for the very programs that are supposed to help. Politicians respond to headlines, not statistics. And so the cycle continues. Social media plays its part too. Misinformation spreads fast and often unchecked. Viral posts claiming outrageous benefit payouts overshadow the real stories of families scraping by on the minimum. Nuance gets lost in the noise. Even reality TV has a role in shaping these views. Programs that showcase benefit cheats or dramatize life on welfare aren't just entertainment, they're propaganda. They reinforce stigma and make it harder for people to ask for help without judgment. But here's the truth: the majority of people living in poverty are working, caring for others, or physically unable to work. They're not lazy, they're exhausted. And media narratives that suggest otherwise do real harm. If we want to address poverty honestly, we need to change how we talk about it. Because until the conversation shifts from blame to accountability, from shame to solidarity, we'll keep fighting symptoms while ignoring the cause. Poverty in the UK isn't just growing, it's evolving, and often in silence. Tell us in the comments, which reason hit you the hardest, or is affecting someone you know. And if you want to go deeper, check out our last video. It connects the dots even further. We pour hours into every episode so you can get the truth. One click to subscribe means everything.